Evening, everyone. I'm Billy. I'm an alcoholic. Welcome back Monday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Quick announcements, just to get them out of the way. Please remember to keep your phone not pointed in the direction of the camera. It worries people about anonymity concerns. I see that someone is here. I can co-host her. So just be careful with your phones so that people don't think that their anonymity is in jeopardy. We do record this. We do not use last names. I do not use last names. If you put last names in your chat, I do not read them or anything, just so you know. Why can't I? When we get to questions, we try to stay away from current conference topics or the General Service Conference just happened a couple of weeks ago. Some of you have probably seen reports from your delegates. Some of you may not. I would tell you that if you have questions about what happened at the conference, if you're pissed off about something that happened at the conference, if you're happy about something that happened at the conference, talk to your delegate. My experience is they all have the time to talk to you, find out when they're given their reports. Some areas do it all at once. Some do it district by district. Some do it in where they're invited. But please go to your delegates for that. Tonight we're on Concept 10 and Tradition 10. And probably what I'm going to do for Tradition 10 is really do like role play of Alcoholics Anonymous meetings or non-meetings or whatever. Because I'll be very honest, there is a difference of opinion on Tradition 10. There is no doubt about it. And who's ever had the news on today realizes that the news is very busy today. And probably realizes that there are many people in the world, including members of Alcoholics Anonymous, who have opinions on everything going on in the news. And how do you walk the minefield of being an active member of society and also observing Tradition 10, which, there's no doubt that there's a line there. I'm the first one to point out that Tradition 1 welcomes you back to the world. Tradition 1 says that, no money nor conformity, that you can do and speak and act as you wish. There is no doubt every AA member is given that right. And that's your right as an AA member. And also, when are you an AA member? One would say that spiritually, it's pretty much a 24-hour-a-day assignment, 365 days a year. If you have decided that you suffer from alcoholism and you wish to be a member, you can be. And when you become a member, you're a member. It's just there are certain times we're undercover and certain times we're in uniform. And then there are certain times when it's a little hard to tell which. And because of how the world is today and how the world has been really for the last 10 years, I'm going to try to, give some examples. So let me read the long form of Tradition 10. No AA group or member should ever, in such a way as to implicate AA, express any opinion on outside controversial issues, particularly those of politics, alcohol reform, or sectarian religion. The Alcoholics Anonymous group suppose no one concerning such matters. They can express no views whatever. So I could even go against that tradition by saying that the three mentioned here are like the cardinal sins, but then I'm almost being religious, right? So I can't even say that politics, sectarian religion, and alcohol reform are the cardinal sins, because then it looks like I'm being religious. But let's just say that we've identified three outside issues that we really have to keep an eye on. What I like to use to describe them is the proverbial stop sign that you might be familiar with if you drive. And if you drive in certain communities and states, there are stop signs that have red lights flashing around the edges of them. In some of these, they're so technically advanced that when you approach and go over a sensor in the road, it activates the red lights to blink around the stop sign. But if you read the motor vehicle law in my state where I live, and I'm sure in your state where you live, there is no difference between a stop sign with red lights or without red lights. You still have to stop. That's the rule. That's the law. The reason for the red lights is to let you know that that intersection is heavily prone to accidents. That's why they put red lights around certain stop signs. It's not because they're saying it's like, for me, it may be a way I used to drive. I used to think things were optional, speed limits, all kinds of things, no U-turns, the one in the middle of the highway for emergency vehicles only, but they have a perfect U-turn thing there that you would have to go 10 miles down the road to go to the next exit. Like, there's all kinds of things that in my mind at one time I probably thought was optional. The stop sign without red lights is not optional. But if it does have red lights, it's letting you know that should you decide not to stop, there have been a lot of accidents there. That's why the blinking red lights. And that's what I consider politics, religion, and alcohol reform. That, yes, we can go off track with outside issues in AA for sure, but we really go off track when they're one of those three issues. And the other thing about those three issues is we have to remember that we're here to provide a safe and welcoming place for the newcomer. And I want to stress that. We have to provide a safe and welcoming place for the newcomer. And that means all newcomers. It does not mean newcomers that just look like me, a white male in a golf shirt today who just left the golf course. We're not talking about a safe place just for white male golfers. We're talking about a safe place for everyone, every alcoholic. And some of these outside issues, if they go too far in a meeting, now I know a lot of you, you've been in AA a while. So people like us, you might piss me off, but you're not going to scare me away from AA. I might leave the meeting shaking my head or not believing what I just heard, but it's not going to cause me to not come back to AA. It might cause me to do the ultimate thing we can do regarding the traditions, which is vote with our feet. I may decide not to go back to that AA meeting or group if it has a habit of doing that. But we're not talking about me. We're talking about a human being who suffers from alcoholism, who is physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally broken, destroyed, the way they show up to Alcoholics Anonymous. And sometimes we think, like, because it's so common to run into people who are in and out of AA, but we really have to be really on guard for the person who's never been to AA before. They have no preconceived notions. They've never had a sponsor before. They've never stayed sober for a while. They don't know what AA is and what AA is not. And I want to stress that from the 10th tradition. It's one of the most important jobs of a sponsor or somebody new, a friend who meets somebody new in AA. That's why when I hear people say our only job as a sponsor is to take people through the 12 steps, not true. Now, I'm the first one to say you're not here to be a trauma counselor, a rape crisis intervention counselor, an incest surviving counselor, a DWI counselor. None of that. But I am here to say that you are here to do some other things. And one of those things is letting newcomers know what is AA and what is not AA. And, I'm going to give you an example of Tradition 10 on the religious front. And I'm going to use myself as an example. If I am sitting in the audience of a meeting, meaning I am not the chairperson and I am not the speaker, I do not appear to someone who's never been to AA before that I am in a position of authority. I'm going to get to that. I'm just your average lunatic in AA with my cup of coffee, coming to get a meeting, sitting as one among equals. Now, those of us who've been to AA before know that the chairperson and the speaker are one among equals too, but not for the person never to AA before. Because most places in society you go, especially regarding religion, if you go into a religious facility, the person who is at the front of the room speaking is usually a person of authority or influence. So when I am sitting in the choir section, the audience section, let's say the meeting topic is step 3. Let's say it's step 11. And I get my 2 or 3 minutes and I decide I feel moved to share that day. Talking about myself finding a higher power or a God is not against Tradition 10 for sure. Our program is in scientific and medical. All we have is to help people find a way to have a relationship with a power greater than themselves. That's what we, for lack of a better word, sell here in AA. I'm even going to give a lot of latitude to somebody who maybe newly found religion in sobriety. They may be tempted to name their God. And if they're sitting in the audience and all they do is name their God, it is not going to bother me. If they confine it to their own experience. Where I can cross over in the audience is if I try to imply to other people that if you don't go to church, there's something wrong with your sobriety. Or you don't have level 2 or 3 sobriety, right? We don't have levels. We don't have degrees. Now, I really go over the deep end if I want to insult someone and say, if you don't find my God, there's something wrong with you, or you're missing something. If I decide to read from a religious book, I've gone too far. We don't read Bible verses, Quran verses, Psalms, acts of contrition. We even don't read. Now, as far as a prayer, we'll get to that. But I'm just talking in the average share from the galley. Now, when I am a chairperson or a speaker, it is my belief, reading everything I can read on Tradition 10, that I should use a little bit more restraint. I don't think a speaker or a chairperson should ever name their particular deity. It could perhaps lead a newcomer to believe that everyone in AA has that God, and that's simply not true. When it comes to prayers, I'm just open-minded. I go by the group conscience. I know there are people who love the Lord's Prayer. There are people who hate it. What are you going to do? I was an atheist when I came to AA. If I walk into a church basement and see 20 people in a circle saying the Lord's Prayer, it looks religious to me. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but I am saying it is important for a sponsor to let their sponsees know that we're not a Christian organization. You can't argue that the Lord's Prayer is not Christian. I will argue that the one we use is not Catholic. We use the Episcopal version just to get that myth out of the way. We do not use the Catholic Lord's Prayer. But I would also tell you that I hear people say use the Serenity Prayer because that's not a religious prayer. That's only if you don't go one paragraph further than where we stop reading. We say, God grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. If we should perhaps go a couple of sentences further in that prayer, we would be naming a particular deity, a Christian deity. But again, prayer is up to the individual group. But I've seen prayers closed, meetings closed with poems. I've seen meetings closed with Wicca prayers. I've seen meetings closed with Muslim prayers. Whatever the group decides to do, it's really, not for me to decide. What I have seen that I think is kind of offensive is when somebody quietly and respectfully. Now, a lot of people in this post-COVID era, many meetings still pray in their seats and don't stand up. It's hard to believe now. We have 5 years of AA members who did not come into AA joining in a circle holding hands. I mean, it's hard for me to even think about that. Like prior to COVID, but there's still meetings now that are back to standing up and holding hands and praying standing up. But I've seen people who respectfully step back from the circle. I've even been in a meeting where someone went up to somebody who stepped back from the circle quietly and respectfully and said to them, "It insults me you don't pray with us." I love the response from that person. They said, it insults them that person thinks they weren't praying. What that person was really saying is, I don't like that you don't say our prayer. And I think that there's a lot of respect that has to go here on this part. I dare mention politics based on I'm sitting in Los Angeles right now, actually, and hopefully I get to the airport tonight. Let's just say we live in a politically charged country right now in the United States of America. Some of you might be from Canada or other places, but it seems politics all over the world, but particularly in the U.S. where I live, are charged. There's a fine line to walk here. For sure, they don't belong in meetings. From someone sharing from the audience or someone sharing as a chairperson or a speaker. We don't talk about political affiliation. We don't identify ourselves as whether we're Republicans or Democrats or Libertarians or whatever. It really has nothing to do with AA. Now, if something going on in the world, it's funny that if you go to certain big book meetings, they'll tell you we only talk about the solution. However, our book says we had a meeting one night a week where we brought up problems. So I'm going to go with the book, okay? I go with the literature. I'm not here to limit what somebody says in a meeting. If you think you need to say that, now, was I raised to believe share in a meeting, dump on your sponsor? Yes, I was raised to believe that. Was I raised to believe that I can't even believe burning desires. If you ever want to go off the deep end on a share that's probably going to break one of the traditions, call on somebody with a burning desire at the end of the meeting. Because I'll tell you right now, most of the announcements for burning desires are an outside issue from before you even call on somebody. When we say if you want to drink or harm yourself, what the hell are we doing? Have we become the suicide hotline? Have we decided that we have become mental health counselors? We're not. We're just not. Now, if your meeting has burning desires, that's great. Some meetings don't. But we have to be very careful with politics. I'll give a real life example. During the last 2 elections ago, day after a primary debate, somebody in my own home group went off the deep end. Of course, couldn't be worse. Somebody with 30 plus years, first person called on to share. And they obviously had a belief in politics. And so they took the inventory of everybody who was on the debate stage from that party the night before. And thank God a woman like 4 shares later raised her hand and said, I just want to let everyone know that we don't talk about that here and that AA has a 10th tradition. And I will tell you that she changed the course of that meeting just by mentioning that. But I will tell you, because it breaks my heart, because I have a brother who is a gay man and a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. It breaks my heart that at the end of that meeting, a young gay man felt that that share was so over the top that he thanked the woman who mentioned what she did, because he said, I'm a gay man, and based on that share, I didn't feel like I would be welcome here anymore. And that breaks my heart. It totally breaks my heart, because that young man deserves to know that we only care about one thing. Is he an alcoholic? And if he is, we want him to know that we have a way out. And that we don't care if he's gay or straight or bi or trans or what. We don't care. But it breaks my heart that at his 3rd meeting, which that was, the one share was so over the top, what he considered hate-filled, that he didn't know if he would be welcome back at that meeting anymore. And seeing him say that to that lady, was a great thing for me to witness in person, for him to thank her and say, all the rest of the shares really felt me reassured that I could come back here. But, we have to be careful, because there's a lot of us here who have served in positions, and whether you have a title or not, you don't need a title to quote unquote look like an AA leader. You could be the person who people in your group look to as a leader, whether you have a position or not. You could be someone who sponsors a lot of people in your area. You could be someone who, has a lot of time and people know helps a lot of people. But we have to be careful, especially if we have a leadership position, if we have a trusted servant position. And that's where being in uniform or undercover is a fine, fine line. I can only tell it from my point of view and what was shared with me and what I try to do. I have political feelings. I'm not afraid to admit that. I do. And I'm not afraid to admit that on certain issues, I feel a lot stronger than others. Like there are some issues that are at the top of my list that I care about. I'm not afraid amongst my family, although my family is crazy and it's best at the Thanksgiving dinner not to talk politics, but I'm not afraid in an intimate conversation with someone who I'm close with to let them know how I feel politically. I don't feel like I'm talking as an AA member or whatever. But I do feel as an AA member and someone who's served in some trusted servant positions that I have to be careful what I say in and around AA or on social media. So I don't believe it would be wrong for me should I pick up my phone tonight and decide to post something about what's going on. I don't believe it's any kind of violation for me to tell other people how I feel. I think I'm entitled to that. I think tradition one gives me that. But I do have to be careful of one thing. It is possible at your district or your area or you're in a group or even inside your group that people know your first and last name. And when they see you post on social media, they know that you're a member of AA. So while I think I'm undercover, there are other people who know I'm an AA member. And then if I'm a trustee or a delegate or a DCM or the chair of my group or the chair of the local intergroup, not only do they know that I'm an AA member, they know I'm a trustee, a delegate, a chair of the intergroup, a DCM, or whatever. Now, that doesn't mean I still can't say to the world how I feel about a particular issue. Where I think we cross the line in AA is if I start bashing people who think different than me. I can give you an example of when I saw a trusted servant post on social media, and it doesn't matter what party they were in, it doesn't matter. But what they said was they would never talk to anybody, ANYBODY, the word anybody. You can look it up. They said they would never talk to anybody who voted for a particular person. Now, if I'm a DCM or the chair of a local intergroup or a trustee, when I say anybody, do I mean other members of AA? Do I mean that? Because if I do, then maybe I shouldn't be a trustee or a delegate or a DCM or the chair of the local intergroup or my group chairperson. Because am I sending a message to new people in AA that I only serve 30% or 50% of the fellowship? If you have a different position than me on this outside issue, I won't talk to you. I don't think that's what AA is about or the 12 traditions and the 12 concepts are about. I believe if I accept the leadership position, I'm serving everybody in AA. And then there's when I name call or, and I'm holding both sides parties accountable. If I say that everyone that voted for a particular man or woman is an idiot, does that mean even the people I sit next to in AA? Am I calling them idiots? For me, I've just found a better way to walk inside AA because if my goal is to be effective, is it's almost like if you look at the history and actions of the General Service Conference, you will notice something about how they're written, advisory actions. I would say 99.9% of the advisory actions are written positively. They tell you what we do. We try not to have negative advisory actions. And that's the way I try to, as someone who has held a few AA leadership positions, try to deal with my own beliefs on political issues. Is I try to just stick to what I believe in and to agree to disagree with people who might believe completely opposite than me. But definitely not to call everybody who voted a certain way a clown or an idiot or academically uh, not gifted or a whole bunch of other things that I have seen written, because I know what it's like to go around the country to different regional forums. And I'm not trying to pigeonhole any parts of the country, but I think it's fair for me to give a general objective or description that there are certain parts of the country that believe stronger on certain issues than others. And there are certain parts of the country that politically sometimes are what might be the majority in one state is the minority in another as far as the way we think. And when we have regional forums and directors or trustees or a general manager or the executive editor or the publisher are presenting to the fellowship, if that same person just called half of the fellowship clowns or just said half of the fellowship must not have common sense because of the way they believe or voted. Now, I'm not saying you don't have a right to say that. I do believe you have a right to say that. I just think you have to ask yourself, do you want to be an effective leader in Alcoholics Anonymous? And if you do, Tradition 12 talks about the spirit of sacrifice. And so while I may believe strongly in something, and while in my head I might for a moment think, what the hell is wrong with the people who voted that way? If I want to be an effective, trusted servant, do I need to insult the members of Alcoholics Anonymous who think differently than me? I think not. I think it's best for me to want to be an effective leader. And I definitely don't want a new GSR. Listen, I've been going to assemblies for a long time. I still go to assemblies. If I'm home, I go to my local assembly, which is Area 15, South Florida. Every once in a while, I'm invited as a guest to other assemblies. And I know what it's like. I'll have something that says I'm a past delegate or past trustee, usually on my name tag. But I don't even need that name tag. I know what happens. Somebody points and says, oh, that person used to be a trustee. That person used to be a delegate. That person is the area chair. That person is the alternate delegate. And if new people are going to want to come up to me to ask questions, I believe that I need to set the appearance to all alcoholics that I'm willing to help them and answer their questions. And I know that, it's a difficult road that we walk on this subject. I do not think it helps when we fan the flames inside AA service, whether we're changing the preamble, creating the plain language big book, or anything else that we vote on, the safety card, the safety service piece. I think it's easy to just say, I disagree with it. Do I need to use derogatory terms about people who might be right-winged or left-winged? Do I need to make an AA meeting or even a private group in social media seem like I just am flipping back channels on the news? I'm sure we all know this. In the United States, you can watch one news channel for 5 minutes and then turn to another news channel, and it's like you're in a different country, right? I mean, listen, it's what happens. I'm a realist. But do we need to bring that nonsense into Alcoholics Anonymous service? I don't think so. So when people make anti-Christian comments, they have no business in Alcoholics Anonymous. When people put down Catholicism or other things, it has no business in Alcoholics Anonymous. When people throw out the woke word, it has no business in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I know that I'm going to take a ton of shit for saying this tonight. I get it. I know it's going to happen. That recording is going to be listened to, and I'm going to have somebody tell me, it's going to be probably people from both sides. I'm going to have somebody tell me that I'm anti-Christian, and I'm going to have somebody tell me that I'm some crazy woke person, right? That's the world we live in. And I'm a realist about it. And I'm saying that none of it should be in Alcoholics Anonymous service. If I'm pro the new preamble or anti the new preamble, why can't I just say why? And I'm going to tell you something I learned a long time ago in AA service, and it has served me very well. And this has served me well 100% of the time, especially in AA discussions or debates that might be described as a little heated. And I'm just going to give you the advice that I was given. The minute that somebody stops discussing the merits of that issue based on our literature and instead starts personally attacking somebody on the other side, vote against them, please. Because it means they ran out of a literature-based argument. It means they ran out of a principled-based discussion. And so because they ran out of that, they want to call somebody, oh, that person's just a crazy right-wing Christian. Or they want to say, don't listen to that person. They're just completely woke and bringing that nonsense into AA. I'm telling you, don't listen to any of those people. And tell your sponsees that none of it has any business in Alcoholics Anonymous. And, you know, I've read some things lately online that have broken my heart. And I'm pointing the finger at both sides. Like how they could say those things about other members of Alcoholics Anonymous. Because, by the way, if somebody happens to be a little bit right-winged, or if somebody happens to be a little bit left-winged, and the only reason I use the woke word is because it's thrown around a lot. It's not a word that I use, but I will say this, whether it's right-winged or left-winged or whatever, it just has nothing to do with an AA group conscience discussion. And by the way, if the person is supposedly right-winged or left-winged, our great tradition one gives them that right to be who they want to be as a human being in the world. We don't get to tell people what to think, what to say, how to act. And, you know, after this year's conference, I saw a couple of things that were posted online. And it broke my heart. Like, why are people attacking other people personally? And that's my message on the politics thing. Like, stick to your own beliefs. You don't need to point the finger or call people names. And the newcomer definitely does not need to see that, as I've said a million times before. You know, I've said a lot, many times, that one of the best spiritual exercises in Alcoholics Anonymous service is that when you lose a group conscience vote, that you should volunteer to be on the committee to carry out the group conscience that you voted against. Like, if you lose a group conscience vote, It's a great spiritual exercise. I know there's a right of appeal and everything else, but that's like 1% of the time. The better spiritual exercise is to accept the group conscience and to move forward. That is the better spiritual exercise. And it's the same way with politics in AA. Like the best thing I can do for a newcomer, for me, I'll tell you my number one prayer in life: to be tolerant of the intolerant. Do you know how hard that is for me to pray to be tolerant of the intolerant? Especially when I'm intolerant. So I'm praying for myself, basically, right? Like here I am praying for people I'm judging to be intolerant when I myself can be intolerant. But you know what? I don't care if you're pro-life or pro-choice. If you have a problem with drinking, I have a job to do. I don't care if you're anti-gun or the biggest Second Amendment flag-waving person in the country. I have a job to do. I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican. I don't care what. Like I have a job to do, which is to reach my hand out and welcome you to the greatest fellowship on earth, the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, which, by the way, am I checking the date right? It's the 9th. Tomorrow is our 90th anniversary. We haven't been around here that long. We've hardly been here at all. As far as the world is concerned, people like us, I won't even say 90 years ago, still 70 years ago, 60 years ago, people like us were locked up in mental facilities and shot up with Thorazine every day and given a checkerboard. That's what they did with people like us. If you're a woman here and you were one of those women, if they decided to maybe let you out, they would make you have a surgery so that you couldn't perhaps reproduce any more alcoholics or have any children because you are an alcoholic and you wouldn't be able to take care of them. That's how barbaric the treatment of people like us was not too long ago. So this amazing thing, Alcoholics Anonymous, that'll celebrate its birthday tomorrow of 90 years. Like when an alcoholic walks in, the 12th tradition is clear. My spirit of sacrifice, my only concern is them. Now, I want to talk about alcohol reform a little bit because let's face it, what's different between now and 90 years ago? Well, you're not going to find the WTCU probably marching down Main Street, right? The Women's Christian Temperance Union doesn't march down Main Street anymore, protesting people who drink or sell liquor, right? But alcohol reform comes in many different things. I've been in a meeting where someone came and said, they're going to open up a new liquor store and check cashing place in town, and I have a petition if you'd like to sign it. We don't make those announcements in Alcoholics Anonymous. One of the hardest things for the outside world to comprehend about AA is we're not anti-alcohol. And we're not pro-alcohol. We're just neutral alcohol. If you're a person who doesn't drink, great. Do you know I have a person who works for me? He has never smoked or drank anything in his life. It blows my mind sometimes. Like, he's just never smoked or drank. I guess I just never hung out with people like that. He doesn't have a problem. He just doesn't smoke or drink ever. But we're not against people who drink. I've seen people bring into AA close to college campuses Oh, there's going to be a big meeting about fraternity hazing and binge drinking. We don't care about fraternity hazing and binge drinking. Outside AA, maybe you have a feeling about that. But inside AA does not have a feeling about that. Now, drunk driving. Obviously, we believe you should not drive drunk. That is the law. And even inside the grapevine, they do not ever make jokes about drunk driving. But we appreciate or respect that the world drinks alcohol. We just know that we can't. But we're not looking to get rid of alcohol or to limit alcohol or to sign petitions or anything like that. We're just here to help alcoholics who want to get sober and stop drinking. And sometimes it's hard for the outside world to understand that. They call GSO all the time. They call and ask GSO for comments when a celebrity got arrested for drinking and driving. They call GSO when 5 fraternity brothers got arrested for forcing someone to drink too much alcohol. They call GSO when some new study was done about binge drinking or pregnant women drinking or recently I saw an article about people in senior living facilities who drink. Now, our committees will help senior living facilities if they need a meeting there or they need to get people from that facility to an AA meeting. But we don't have a position on drinking or retired people drinking. You know, when my mother died of cancer, she was in a hospice. I had, up until that point, never been to a hospice before. I didn't really understand the difference between a hospice and a hospital. Today I do. The dignity of providing someone to transition from one life to another is beyond belief, and I'm so grateful that people have that skill. But I remember in my mother's hospice, there was a woman dying in the room next to her. And I don't know if any of you have been in the hospital. I've had a couple of surgeries. You ever see the menu in a hospital? It's not good news usually. That's my experience. I don't like Jello, number one. It grosses me out, the texture. Um, I don't like clear broth soup, right? Or how about you ever have some ice chips? They're really going out on the wing. They're going to give you ice chips that night, right? In the hospice that my mother was in, you could order whatever you wanted. They didn't care. You could say, I want the rarest cheeseburger with a ton of ketchup, a pack of Marlboros, and 2 shots of wild turkey. Really? There was a lady, I went into, at that time, there was a smoking room. I went in the smoking room or the break room, and the patient next to my mom was there with her IV pole, smoking a Marlboro 100 and drinking wild turkey. And the only reason I bring that up is good for her. We're not anti people enjoying alcohol if it works for them. Our job is just to work with alcoholics, for people who alcohol doesn't work for anymore. And sometimes it's hard for people to really wrap their heads around that. Now, I knew tonight, because Tradition 10 is so important in today's world. Think about the newcomers coming into AA. You know, think about all the outside issues, you know. We don't care who you are. We don't care where you come from. We don't care what country you're from. We don't care about any of that. We welcome you to the fellowship of the Spirit. And I knew this. So next week, I'm going to talk about Concept 10, Concept 11, and Tradition 11. but I really wanted to make sure that Tradition 10 got fully covered because it's so important. And I run into so many people. Just yesterday, uh, I'm not kidding you. Just yesterday, I was an AA related event, and they were talking about, it was technically outside of AA, but the people involved, a lot of them are members of AA. And a young new person asked a question about somewhere they were going. And their question was, do I have to take my piercings out? And when I hear somebody say something like that, I think of a past delegate who in 1999, when I was a young delegate, told me that my problem was that I was friends with too many people who had metal in their face, right? Now, granted, that's a different time and day. We're talking like 26 years ago. But I don't want someone in a suit and tie to think they're not invited into AA or an AA event. I don't want someone who's wearing biker gear. I don't want someone who has a bunch of ink and piercings to think that they have to change who they are to come to AA. Now, I will say this, and I've said this before out of respect for AA members and how busy our lives are. So if you picked up your two kids at school and you took one to volleyball and one to softball, and you ran home to start making dinner, and then went out and picked them up and brought them home and fed them dinner and made sure they did their homework and put them to bed, and then ran out to a meeting because you're trying to stay sober, and you forgot that you had a t-shirt on or a hat or a pin that was political in nature or an outside issue. I hear people say you shouldn't wear sports teams things. Yeah. I'm just going to remind you that it doesn't say sectarian religion, politics, alcohol reform, and the SEC versus the Big Ten. Okay. It doesn't say that. Okay. I don't think sports teams is a controversial issue. That's my belief after reading everything I can read. If that's what you believe, don't wear it. But I do believe that if you by accident wore a baseball hat or a t-shirt or a pin that had a strong political statement or candidate's name on it, because you were just trying to stay in the stream of life, it's no big deal. However, if you make it a point to show up to your meeting wearing the same baseball hat or the same t-shirt all the time, I think you're stepping over the line. I think you're using AA to send a political message. And I think you could possibly be making someone who's a newcomer feel uncomfortable. And I think that goes too far. So that's it. I'm going to open it up for any questions on Tradition 10. I will give it a minute or two for any questions on Tradition 10. I see that Zoom has an update now, so you can get a new chat, a main chat, or then it says who has a question. But I will give it a minute or two. And your name won't be read. You're in complete anonymity, asking any question you want to ask. I'll give it one more minute. Up. Here's a good question. Last year, a political candidate in my area mentioned the recovery community in some of their public statements and seemed to be reaching out to recovering people to vote for him. That is an awesome, awesome question. So that's where we have to say there's a big difference between the recovery community and Alcoholics Anonymous. If a politician wants to reach out or maybe think that people who are in some 12-step fellowship should vote for them, I mean, it's none of AA's business. If an AA member who is obviously in recovery likes a candidate because of their feelings on certain things that are alcoholism related, that's their business. Now, if we start trying to tell people to vote for someone in an AA setting or a parking lot, because then we've probably gone too far. I'll tell you something else I learned, and I learned it this year. I learned it because I witnessed it. You know, I've heard of celebrities, especially TV and movie stars, who have shown up to meetings that they normally go to, and somebody is there with a script they wrote. We're an ingenious bunch, us alcoholics, you know? Yeah, that's not a good way to make that person feel like they're one among equal, okay? No scripts. But I also attend a men's meeting. That's a very popular meeting in my county on the weekend. And not too long ago, there was somebody who was politically very well known who came to our meeting. And I will give that person a lot of credit. They usually sat in the front row. They were very nice to other members of AA. When they asked, is anyone visiting from another area, they raised their hand and said what their name was and where they were from, even what their home group was. But as AA members will do, I saw him at least 3 times over a 2-month period have to stop people inside the meeting after the meeting who wanted to tell him that they either support him or don't agree with anything he has to say, or wanted to start a conversation around politics. I saw him many times shut that down, and what a good example of an AA member he was. But we should know better as a fellowship, and we should let our sponsees know. The same way I saw someone ask a celebrity to sign their big book. Like, we don't ask for AA members' autographs. Let's see, there's a couple of questions here. What about groups who have a Christmas potluck or some other particular holiday event? So it's a tough issue because, and by the way, if you have a hand up, we don't call on people. You got to send your question in. You didn't put your hand up? Okay. GSO used to give out Christmas bonuses. Bill and Lois used to send out a Christmas letter. Now, that's when 90% of AA was probably Christian. I'm not here to tell a group what to do if they want to have a Hanukkah party or a Christmas party or a Ramadan party. I mean, I don't think it's a good idea in today's AA. But yet we have Thanksgiving alkathons and Christmas alkathons, and holidays are a tough time of year. So I think there's a way we can do it where we send the message that we're not telling anyone how to believe or what to believe in. Would you talk to someone who wore a political piece of clothing at your home group? I would if they made a habit of it. Then I would. There's a gentleman who wears a political hat at our home group, and it makes me and others feel uncomfortable. Yeah, I don't doubt it. Again, if he's in the stream of life and that's the hat he wears every day, God bless him. If he makes it a thing to wear that hat at every meeting, I just don't think it belongs. What would I say to him? Number one, it would not be my first conversation with him. So I think I would start to ask myself questions. Is this somebody I see at my meeting a lot? If it's not, then I don't care. If it's somebody I see every week and they wear it, I would probably try to talk after the meeting with them. I would probably try to ask them if they're familiar with the 10th tradition. Now, you could have someone bite your head off. I've had some people bite my head off. Tell you it's none of your business. Okay. What I would probably do after that is I would bring it up at my home group meeting, business meeting, that maybe we should have an announcement at the beginning of the meeting, that we don't want to regulate clothing or hats, but we would ask people that, the group feels that, hats or clothing of a political nature are best not in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, and see how the group feels about doing that. I mean, but this is a tough subject, a really tough subject. Because let's face it, we know who we're dealing with. We're dealing with us. You ask somebody not to wear a hat, and next week they're in a vest, pants, a shirt, and a hat with that message on it, right? I mean, we know who we are, right? I mean, you know what you could get. But I still think at the end of the day, AA takes the high road. And we can try to be fair about this. And the question you have to ask yourself is this: am I only willing to say that to somebody who wears something that disagrees with me? Or am I willing to say it to anyone, even people who might be wearing a message or a candidate's name that I agree with? If I'm not willing to say it to everyone, then I just should not be saying anything. Yes, you can message me something offline. I'm putting my email. Who should discuss potential violation of Tradition 10 with someone, GSR or any member? Uh, no, the main chat is not disabled. You can send a message to the host. It should not be disabled. Let me take a look at that. Yeah, you can chat with hosts and co-hosts. Okay, the person who asked that question about what I said last week about other problems go away, please ask next week, because I'm traveling right now and I don't have my big book with me. Is it our responsibility as a home group members to say something to another home group member if they wear political shirts to the meeting? Yeah, I don't think we need to make the GSR the enforcer. I sometimes think polite conversations that maybe you start talking about something. I find it's best to have a friendship with somebody before I start talking to them about the traditions. If their first introduction to me is I'm the great Dr. No, AA police, it never goes good, ever. Oh my God. One of my favorite pet peeves. What about political themed backgrounds on Zoom? Yeah, kick him out. Please remove that person from the meeting. And you can disable that camera if you want, but I'm going to tell you they're just going to come back in under another name. So it doesn't belong in AA. I've been around AA a long time. This is the most disunity I've ever seen. Are you seeing things that seem to be working and bringing disparate people and groups together? Yeah, I think I am seeing things. I think the number one thing is to stop the personal attacks. Stop the ugly name calling. It is crazy in AA. I'll tell you how crazy it is. This is how crazy it is. This is how insane our service fellowship has become. Now, I have to change the name so that I do not get too much hate mail. Um, but this is a past delegate, okay? Now, during the whole debacle we went through with the chair of the General Service Board resigning, being asked to resign, you decide what it was. I'm not getting in that debate. But we know we had a lot of disunity a couple of years ago when that happened. Now, a past delegate wrote this on social media. I don't recall calling George D down on anything. I've never seen anything about him to complain about. He was one of the co-signers from the Pacific region who slammed the treatment of Linda Chisholm. I use her last name because she was a Class A trustee. Now, that's what a past delegate wrote about George D, saying, George D, past trustee, past general manager. He wrote, I don't ever recall saying anything bad about George. Now, 7 years ago, that same past delegate wrote the following. George D was part of the gay wing and pushed the YPA crap. I didn't know there was a gay wing in AA. I'm not aware of that. But I will tell you, it pisses me off that some past delegate could, on one hand, say, oh, I never talked bad about that person. And 7 years before was blasting that past trustee and general manager for being gay. That is the AA world we live in today. That is insane. And if we want to preserve unity, learn to agree to disagree, learn to accept the group conscience, and stop the personal attacks. Okay, that is it. I hope everyone has a great week. I hope everyone tomorrow wakes up and whatever you do in the morning, not my business to say, but in a couple hours from now, AA will be 90 years old. It's 90 years old on June 10th because we don't celebrate AA when there was only one member. We say that it started when there was two. So Dr. Bob and Bill. And that's a pretty important thing for the rest of us. And to go into this week thinking that, it still blows my mind that my father was born before AA existed. My grandfather died falling down a staircase drunk 6 years after AA started. Like, we are so lucky to have Alcoholics Anonymous. So with that, we will close in the regular way with the responsibility statement. I am responsible when anyone out there reaches out for help. I want the hand of AA always to be there. And for that, I am responsible. Have a good night, everyone.